Well, President Chris, Rotarians and guests, it's my great pleasure to introduce Colin Pearce, storyteller, author. I was first introduced to Colin Pearce about 7 years ago. I was so captured by his down-to-earth prophecies that I subscribed to his regular newsletter called Kick in the Pants. Look it up and subscribe yourself. It's interesting, by sharing your views in a public forum like this, you can't hide your values to your readers, and your readers get to know you. Now, I feel I know Colin just merely from his publications. Colin's both has inspired me and reminded me that life can be simple and fun. It's only if you forget the rubbish and the hype around you. Inducted into the Australian Speakers Hall of Fame back in 2007, Colin has spent 30 years giving funny speeches at business conferences. Okay, all over the place, all the way across to LA and Istanbul and Indiana. Colin has written 6 business books and many business training programs. I know I've got one of his training programs in my workplace as well. And he has qualifications in theology and teaching. He's just finished his Masters in creative writing, and so he can find out how to write better. Interesting. But he likes people to know him simply as a storyteller. His latest book, I Used to Be Dead, is sitting on our tables. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute, but right now, everyone, please welcome Colin Pearce.
Thank you very much, Giuliano, and President Chris, distinguished Rotarians of the second largest Rotary Club in Australia, beaten only by Sydney, I'm told. Imagine that. Imagine that. They've got 5 times the population, they can barely manage 300 members. And here you are, the best of the bunch. Well done and congratulations. Love the work of Rotary, and I'm very honoured to be able to speak. Thank you, Giuliano, for those very kind remarks. You give me the creeps a bit when you tell me that you get to know somebody's values through their newsletters. That's rather frightening, because I do have the odd glitch some days. Somebody wrote the other day and asked me if I needed a hug, because I've got the grumps on somebody, probably the Labor government or something. But anyway, I'm trying to be non-political, and if you'd like to subscribe, drop your business card in a glass and we'll collect them later. Let's talk about what makes the difference. And I'm going to talk to you about the money in a minute, but I want to first of all talk about dogs. You learn such a lot from dogs. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt who said if you can look a dog in the eye and he looks away, then you need to go home and examine your character. And I think that's reasonably true. I've got 4 quick little dog tales. I was in a coffee shop one day, or actually a little deli type place, and there was a dog with a tea towel in his mouth, and he was kind of emptying the dishwasher and drying them with the tea towel with his paw and shoving them to one side. And I said, "You're a good fella." And he said, "I'm only doing the dishes." I said, "You can talk." He said, "Shut up, if the boss finds out, he'll have me answering the phone and serving customers." Which only served to illustrate that some people underestimate their value and try to get away with doing as little as possible, and some bosses are known to exploit those they find out have extra talents. But then a friend of mine told me that he was in a shop and advertising for new staff, and he had a sign on his front window saying, "Help wanted, must be multilingual and computer literate." So he was standing hoping that somebody would come in, and the door banged, the little bell went, and without Andrea's help, as it turns out, no ding there, they just did it automatically. You'd like one of those, I suppose, wouldn't you? How about when every time somebody stands up, the bell goes, and you don't have to do anything. It'd be marvellous. Anyway, the bell went on the door, and he went out, peeked through the curtain, and there was a big German Shepherd standing there, and he said, "You're at the wrong shop, boy. Where you go? You lost, are you?" And the dog turned around and pointed with his paw at the sign. Help wanted, computer literacy, and bilingual. And he said, multilingual. And the guy said, "You can't be serious. I'm not having a dog work for me." I can't even believe I'm talking to a dog. Suddenly the dog hopped up onto the bench, clicked on the computer, and composed a beautiful resume right there in front of him with all his little paws going at once. And the guy could not believe his eyes. He says, "Yeah, but I bet you can't do a website." The dog immediately opened up Internet Explorer and some software that he managed to click onto and made himself a beautiful website advertising himself. The fellow couldn't believe it. He was astounded. And he said, I'm not going to hire a dog. I don't think I did it. Oh, I know. He said, you've got to be multilingual. And the dog looked up and went, meow. So some people have more talent than you give them credit for. A lot of managers don't recognise that. Probably my second favourite story about a dog is that a chap was driving down the road one day and he saw a sign on a fence saying, good dog, home needed, free. He thought, wow, kids have been talking about getting a dog. I reckon I could pull up. So he did a U-turn, came back, parked in front of the house, went in, knocked on the front door, and he said, I saw the sign about the free dog, mate. I wonder if I could talk to you about the dog. He said, go around and have a look at him yourself. He's round the back. So the man went around the side gate, leaned over the gate, and the dog was asleep under the clothesline. And the man went, here boy. The dog opened one eye and said, don't patronise me, pal. Ralph's the name. The visitor could not believe his ears or his eyes. And he said, a talking dog? He said, oh, that's the least of me talents, mate. I'm actually a police dog, trained customs inspector. Half hasn't been told. The dog got up and he sauntered over and looked at the chap and sat there. And the fella said, tell me your story. And he said, oh, when I was a pup, I found out I could talk. They got me investigating things. Got in the police force when I grew up a bit. I was a guide dog, but that was a bit boring, so I worked for the police for a while, spying, and I got into customs. Went over to Afghanistan, finding out, sniffing bombs and stuff. And I got a bit tired of that too, so I just told him I didn't want to do anything more. I just want to come home and have a quiet rest. But the bloke inside didn't like me much, so I told him to find me a new home. You can imagine yourself in that situation. His eyes were agog. He went back to the front door and he knocked on the door and he said, I can't believe you want to give that animal away. I'll take him. And the guy said, yeah, got to warn you though, he's a bleeding crimson liar. He's never done half them things he talks about. Again, some managers underestimate the capacities of their people and altogether overlook them. I suppose my very favourite dog story is the one about the burglar in California who was breaking into a priest's house around the San Diego Capistrano area. And it was dark, the priest was taking mass somewhere, so he crept in. And to his great surprise, he heard a burglar alarm with a really creepy tone saying, Jesus is watching you. He thought, this is creeping me out. And the further he went into the house, the louder the sound got. Jesus is watching you. He thought, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to find out where the burglar alarm is and turn it off so I can pinch all the bloke's stuff. So as he went through the priest's house, he went from door to door to door and couldn't find anything, but the sound got louder. He looked, he observed, couldn't see any red blinking lights. He opened the laundry door and with his torch, he smiled and heaved a sigh of relief. His torch fell on the face of a talking parrot. And just then, as his torchlight fell onto the face of the Doberman guard dog on whose head the parrot was sitting, the parrot said, "Sick him, Jesus!" Well, dogs are wonderful creatures, and they do tell us that there are more things in this world than we ever thought of in people, but a lot of people just don't present themselves very well. I'm going to ask you some questions. If I could show you a way to slash whining, belly aching and complaints at your work, to knock accidents on the head, cut your work cover claims, flush away stress for yourself and your managers, feel the loyalty you really deserve, get top quality output for a change, wipe out your waste, and above all, start pocketing your own money at last, make your good people feel like staying and the bad people feel like leaving, attract only the best new people, keep your work atmosphere fresh and inviting, nip trouble in the bud, reward your team in ways that count, stop the boat from rocking, make Monday everyone's favourite day, and above all, build your profits and job satisfaction, I guess you'd want to know about it, wouldn't you? Well, perhaps we'll talk a little bit about that now. It's about building character. I studied character 7 or 8 years ago, around the time that I first met Mr. Rec, and I started a program called Character Works, where I looked at Australian heroes of character and I wrote magazine articles about them and complete magazines. Compassion with Edward Weary Dunlop, Joyfulness with John Simpson Kirkpatrick, the New Zealand Flyer, Jean Batten for Courage, Character for Don Bradman, the flagship of the Navy as it were, Loyalty with Sir Edmund Hillary, and so on the list goes. And I became absolutely fascinated with the fact that most of the people who regard as heroes in Australia are people of character. I asked over 3,500 Australians and New Zealanders what they admire about people they admire. I was expecting, because of the press and the coverage, that people would say good looks, great figures, lots of money, huge inventor, someone with political clout. And almost to a man and woman, people pick their nan, their uncle who suffered through a terrible cancer. They picked a child with an awful illness. They picked somebody who was next door and treated them kindly as a child, somebody who was a teacher. They hardly picked a famous figure. And they gave me over 15,000 words, and I ended up collating that list into about 24, and it seems as though in a ratio of 86%, ratio of 14 to 1, people choose character qualities over skill-based issues when they're thinking of somebody. Now, I know you probably think that's a bit strange because you probably hired the last idiot you hired because of their resume and their skills. And it wasn't long before you realised that you would like to get rid of them because of their character. And you could read tomorrow morning's, is it Wednesday? Tomorrow's Wednesday? Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow's what? Tell me. What day is it?
Today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. Go back and look at the advertised this morning, and in the Help Wanted, you will find hardly any references to character qualities. It'll all be about how you can do spreadsheets, how they'll say stupid things like self-driven and self-motivated and good with people. But it won't specify the real character qualities that you want when you're trying to get rid of somebody because they haven't got them. You want somebody who is adaptable and conscientious, who is eager, who is determined, who's got compassion, did I say that, who is impeccably honest. You want somebody who is careful beyond measure. You know, you can take anybody in this room who doesn't have a skill but has great character and you'd be very satisfied to employ them. Let's take the person who employs an assistant to work on their spreadsheets. And the person says, yep, good at spreadsheets, and they fill in the application, they do the whole thing. And then you quickly find out that they can't do spreadsheets at your level at all. So you go to them and you say, look, your spreadsheets aren't really up to scratch. And they crack a fruity and go right off their deep end and blame you for putting the wrong ad in the paper. You've probably had an experience like that. Or on the other hand, you go to somebody in the same condition and say, look, I'm sorry, your spreadsheets aren't up to scratch. They take out their hanky, they wipe their eye and they say, I know, I've been losing sleep over this. I told my husband or my wife, whatever, I'm so embarrassed. I applied for the job, it's way over my skill level, and I've been seeing if we can raise some money to take a course and fix it because I'm just so embarrassed that I'm not good enough at it. Right then and there, you would ring up the nearest TAFE and pay their money to get them trained properly to do it because their character's in the right place. They're humble, they're honest, they're determined, they're sincere. Until it became unbearable. But you would still try to find a place for them because their character is in the right place. So let's talk about the money. I'll give a full set of these magazines to the table that can name in the next 40 seconds, buzz, buzz, buzz among yourselves, at least 5 people on Australia's polymer currency. Buzz among yourselves. The first table who's got 5 stands up and they get the full set of magazines to share among the table members. So we think table 7 is ready. Stand up, table 7, and let's hear you do your stuff.
No, I was just saying that we're ready, I think, from the...
Well, who are they?
They're not ready.
They're not ready at all. Liar, liar, pants on fire.
No, I think we are.
You think we are?
Well, you didn't say we couldn't look at the notes, so I'm just
I wish you'd hurry up instead of gab trapping and tell us the answer.
Well, there's a queen on one.
This table thinks they're ready. Let's go with number one.
Queen.
Yes?
Mawson, Chisholm, Mawson, Daniel Gilbert.
No, I'm sorry. So Douglas is long retired. Anybody else close? Yes, at the end. Call them out. Monash.
Queen.
The Queen.
All right, but so they keep going up.
What part about name 5 did you not quite understand? So you think you're ready? Go. I'm sorry, we bombed out with Mawson. He's gone. Mawson's retired. Oh, well, that's a shame. Look, you were the closest and the nearest to the first. While Mr. President comes forward, I'd like you to come and get this set of magazines for being a half-baked warm fish.
They still reckon Mawson's only a alternative.
Well, Mr. President, yes, I'd like you to come here. Just come right here. Are you a risk taker? Are you a gambling man? Get right over here. Have you been known to take a risk?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, answer these questions. See how clever you are. What's that?
It's a $2 coin.
Very good. It's a $2 coin. So we write about the money. You can stop talking about the money now. I'll tell you who they are in a minute, all right? Give Rotarians a quiz question, away they go. So here are some questions. What is...
No is the answer.
It probably is. What do silkworms eat?
Mulberry leaves.
Very good. And when you're said to be working hard, you roll up your...
Sleeves.
And the silkworm eats the...
Mulberry leaves.
leaves, and silkworms make...
Silk.
And cows drink...
Water.
Very good, you're sharp. You're really sharp. Could somebody bring me his glass of water, please? Juliana, could you bring me his glass of water? Good. So, with that in mind, you hang on to your water there, and I'll give you a double or nothing. Let's make the answer water. All you have to do is answer water every time I ask you a question. Is that all right?
Probably not.
You didn't win the $2, so let's try it for the 5. Answer the question.
You need to hold this.
Yes, the answer is water. What's the answer?
Water.
No matter what I ask you, you'll say...
Water.
Are you convinced about that?
Water.
So if I gave you the question for $5 and the question was, have you ever fibbed about a busy day so you could get out of doing a rotary task, your answer would be...
Water.
Hey, very good. There's $5. That's fantastic. No way.
I'm done here.
No. The question is now, would you like to double your money?
Water.
Oh, all right. So we're up for the $10. That's good. So the next question is, have you ever fibbed to your wife about where you've been?
Water.
Atta boy, there you are, $10. Would you like to go for 20? He's going very, very well.
Water.
Oh, he's going for 20, all right. So, have you ever forced a child to eat something it didn't want to eat?
Water.
There you go. Look, let's skip the giving out. You're going to go for this. Let's go for 2.5 times, which is the 50. So on the 50, let's just say, do you love being president of Adelaide Rotary?
Water.
There you go. See, it's easy. Then let's just go for one more. For $100. You hold the 50?
And all this.
Yep. Double or nothing. The $100. Would you like these $100, or would you like to stick with the glass of water?
Water.
Her Ladyship the Queen, bless her, is on the front side of the $5 note. The $10 note bears the face of that old communist herself, Mary Gilmore. It's interesting that some of the people on these notes are poets. A lot of them are church people. Mary Gilmore wrote for the Australian Worker. which was a communist newspaper, and her views were so strong and strident that the worker decided to sack her, and the Communist Party expelled her because her views were too radical for her time. Mary Gilmore was an absolutely fabulously amazing person, wrote 14 books of poetry, and she was a champion of the downtrodden, the poor, and wanted fair work for just about everybody, long before anybody else thought of the word fair work or work choices. She's very famous for a poem she wrote in the 40s, because she entered her poem in the Women's Weekly, of all strange places, for a commo to put her writing, but she did. She was talking about the possible invasion of the Japanese, and she said, "Sons of the mountains of Scotland, Welshmen of Coombe and Defile, breed of the moors of England, children of Erin's green isle, we stand four square to the tempest, whatever the battering hail. No foe shall gather our harvest or sit on our stockyard rail. Our women shall walk in honour, our children shall know no chain. This land that is ours forever, the invader shall strike at in vain. Anzac to Brook and Kokoda, could ever the blood fail, no foe shall gather our harvest or sit on our stockyard rail." She was a champion of Australia, and of course on the other side is Andrew Barton Patterson, and I chose him as a person of character for patience and endurance. It was said of him, Vance Palmer said, that our Australian culture would probably not have advanced to the stage it did without the writings and the work of Andrew Barton Patterson. What a wonderful poet and storyteller he was. We come to Mary Ryby. This poor girlie, 14 years of age, was caught escaping from grandma's house to go and see her boyfriend. She stole a horse, dressed up, and gave the name of her boyfriend when the constable caught her, and she was transported to Australia for 7 years. When she was 16, she married Mr. Ryby, and he became a wealthy investor, trader, and shipper. He died shortly after that. She was left with 5 children and became one of the great pioneer women of Australia. A little girl of 14 transported for a mistaken identity. On the back, of course, is a fabulous John Flynn, friend of the outback. I'll skip the 50 and come back to that. Dame Nellie Melba, she was a rascal, but they said her voice had absolutely perfect timbre and pitch, and any recording that is rescued of her doesn't catch her tone because it was too long ago, but it certainly captures the accuracy of her pitch. It's said that her records made the gramophone famous because she was so endured. The day she died, Parliament stood in silence and the population gathered in great mourning. And on the back, you must look up General Sir John Monash. What an absolutely astounding fellow. Known in those days as a Jew boy. His advancement to general was astounding, but he couldn't get any higher in the British rankings because he was born in Poland, or Germany as it was then, and it was thought that a German, Jew, controlling all of Britain's troops would be a bad thing. But you probably know the legend of how he organised the escape from Gallipoli without the loss of a man, and 45 minutes after he got all the people off Gallipoli Peninsula, saved millions of pounds in revenue, the Turks bombarded the empty trenches to no avail. He's also credited with winning the First World War through the Battle of Amiens and Villers-Bretonneux. I shall finish quickly with these two, my very favourite. It's amazing, isn't it, that we handled notes all day long. I get $50 to take to New Zealand for 3 weeks and I have to bring it home, or a receipt even for as little as a penny toilet, so I'm a man under a great authority. I love the $50 note. On one side is the beautiful lady, the first woman parliamentarian in Australia, and I chose her for the character quality of benevolence. And benevolence was Edith Cowan to the maximum. She founded the Aboriginal Court, so that Aboriginal people in Western Australia could be assessed separately from white people under slightly different and varied laws. She founded the Children's Court. She was the first Australian woman to stand for Parliament and win her seat. She had such compassion and such generosity. You really should read Edith Cowan's story. And on the back, I get a lump in my throat when I think of this wonderful man and how sad it is that so few people know who he is. A native born and bred South Australian from Rauken, as it's now called, down on the Great Lake. His name was Unaipon, David Unaipon, the Presbyterian missionaries called him. At the age of 14, he asked the missionary if he could leave Rauken and study in the city. So he got special permission from the Department of Aboriginal Care and left Rauken and studied in Adelaide, where he self-taught himself maths, physics and other sciences. He went on to be the first Aboriginal poet, the first published poet, that is, in English, the first published Aboriginal author. He was the first Aboriginal with a patent. And you'll see on the $50 note the wide-tooth shearing comb, which revolutionised shearing and country fairs in Australia. David Yanaipon was the first person of Aboriginal descent to appear at a royal commission, and yet he still couldn't get lodging at many pubs and hotels because he was a black fella. Smiling, encouraged always to do the best for his people and for those of us who inherit his legacy of fair play and honesty today, David Yanaipon stands as the character quality of creativity, the very best. Ways of finding new ways to solve difficult challenges. And that's David Yanaipon. I wish you the best as you think about character, and I tell you, for you to be able to sustain the second biggest Rotary Club in Australia, there's got to be some strength of character and compassion, care in here that you need to cherish, and I wish you well. Cheers.
Okay, so Rotarians, unfortunately President Chris tells me we're not going to have enough time for questions.
Oh, good.
And I don't know if any of you would dare today, because you could be, Colin could have a bit of fun with you. But look, I know Colin will be around for a little bit, so if you would like to ask him a question. Now, I'd like to wrap up by giving Colin's latest book a plug. He didn't have time to talk about these here. But you'll notice on the tables, we've thrown a few books out there. Sorry? $20. 20.
I'm the side act.
Thank you, Colin. Come in here. Join me. Now, look, to tell you the truth, I bought this book myself a little while ago for my 14-year-old son. Okay. After reading the first few chapters, he came up to me and said, "Dad, you've given me a book about Jesus." Now, I told him, "Not really. Just keep reading the book." And he did. And that just shows that you can still capture 14-year-olds' imagination, intelligence and the like. And my son is not a big reader, and for a book to capture him, that's fantastic.
About a girl too.
It was about a girl. In fact, it's set in a village in Palestine about 28 AD with four free-spirited 12-year-olds known for causing havoc. And by the way, I thought my son could relate to this because there's no debate about it. He creates havoc and gets away with it. Talia and her three untamed friends make ridiculous plans and never come off. Okay, they steal, disturb the peace, all the kind of things that naughty 12-year-olds do. But when they hear about a stranger who makes miracles happen to sick people just by his voice, they tag along after him, only to be disappointed time and time again because they can't get him. But then Talia gets sick. Just like I recommended Colin today, I recommended to our members a bit of an unprecedented thing on the bulletin. Say, guys, come on, listen to Colin. I am recommending this book to you, but I feel under no obligation to grab it.
No, feel under obligation.
Feel under no obligation. Feel under obligation. No obligation. Much like we had the play on words before with what day it was today, Colin. Very well. Please join me in thanking Colin as I present him with our customary pen. Thank you, Colin.